What's going on, everyone? It's Mike with This Old Hot Rod. Appreciate you coming back and checking out what I got going on in the shop. We're working on the Dragster. It's episode 5, and today what I'm doing is I'm cutting down a 9-inch rear axle. You can see I've already removed the axle itself. Pretty simple. It was just the 4 bolts. The axle has definitely spent some time outside, so the bearing was pretty rusted inside the end housing. So I ended up having to use a sledgehammer with a brass drift in order to get it out of the axle tube. But that being said, that's done. The axle is just sitting in front of me underneath the camera. The reason why I need to get the axle out is because I need to narrow this axle tube, this housing. It's 4 inches too long on the driver's side because the pinion is offset 4 inches. I need to bring it over and center the rear axle on the frame rails. In order to do that, I need to remove 4 inches of the driver's side. I also need to remove these 2 leaf spring pads because this came out of a pickup, and I figured I might as well kill 2 birds with 1 stone, remove the leaf spring pad and narrow the rear axle at the same time. The reason I need to do that is I need to square the rear axle assembly. In order to do that, I need to be able to get everything centered, get the axle put back in the rear assembly, and use my string with a plumb bob on the floor, get my marks on the floor, so I can triangulate the rear axle to make sure it's square to the front of the car. Once that's all said and done, set in place, I'll make sure the pinion is at 0 degrees. And I have some shims under here now, just temporarily holding it there, but I am going to be moving the rear axle around as I'm working on the car. Once I can get this narrowed, get it centered, get it squared, and get the pinion at 0, I'm going to do some temporary mounts that come off the top of the frame rail right here and go to the bottom. The reason why I'm trying to get all this stuff done is I want to get the body on. Once I get the body on, then I can figure out where exactly my roll cage is going to go, where the seating is going to go, my steering wheel, the steering box, all that stuff. But everything hinges on getting this rear axle mounted first. So that's what we're working on today. It's kind of a long intro, but I already have it measured. And let me just get my hearing protection, like I said, and get some of my protective equipment on. I'm going to get this thing cut out. There's the 4 inches I didn't need. I got this bell cut off the rear axle, as you can see. I just threw it over onto the table on my big 12-inch sanding disc, squared it off the best I could, and then did a quick bevel on the outside edge. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this backing plate put back on so I can get a measurement from the passenger side to the pinion to the drive shaft yoke, and then the driver's side to the drive shaft yoke. I don't really have anything to measure from on this side to make sure that my lengths are even on both sides. So I want to make sure that I have the same reference point on both sides. So I have you can see this clamp here. I have a clamp clamped in place, just something that I could set this axle and the bell on, just to make sure that I have everything in line. Like I said, I'm just putting this backing plate on just so I have something to reference and make sure that I have equal lengths on both sides. So now, like I said, that's bolted on there. I need to just get an idea of the distance from the back edge of the backing plate to my pinion to the drive shaft yoke on both sides, so I know my measurement where I cut it is correct. But it's going to fall off, so I need to, like I said, I've never done anything like this, so I'm learning as I go, like I pretty much do everything. It's not a bad thing. And I'm also going to have to make sure that the top flange is the same as that other side. Just going to do some quick measurements here. Grab a straight edge. Alright. 22 3/8. 22 5/8. Alright, so I'm off by 1/4 of an inch. Alright, so I'm measuring, taking a straight edge from the back side of my backing plate and measuring off of the edge of the pinion yoke, drive shaft yoke, and I'm at 22 5/8 on the driver's side and 22 3/8. So So I am 1/4 of an inch off. So that means I need to take off another 1/4 of an inch of the driver's side axle tube. So what I'll do is I'll wear my glasses this time when I'm cutting, because truthfully I couldn't really see that great. I'm not saying that's why I'm off, but I'm just gonna wear my glasses so I can actually see what I'm doing. So I just need to take off 1/4 inch more of that side of the axle tube, and then the axle is narrowed. Pretty cool. All right, so I got a little bit more work to do. So 1/4 of an inch. These off here. I'm happy with this side, so I'm gonna keep this side the way it is. And I'm gonna remove 1/4 of an inch of the material off of this. And I think I'll be good. All right, let's do this all over again and check it again and see where we're at. Just sliced a notch inside on the bottom of that cleat there. Maybe try to hold this angle line a little better. There we go. That actually works. A little off on the front there. Let's measure it real quick and see where we're at. I think I gotta just shave this front edge just a little bit. I can actually see it, but let's just measure it real quick and see where I'm at. So I need to be 22 3/8. That's the measurement I'm looking for. I want to get the end of this housing cleaned up so I can tack weld it, because there's a little bit of oil and stuff inside. Like I said, I'm gonna have to clean this whole thing anyways, but for now I just need to get it clean enough so I can get some tack welds on it. I was just thinking of that. I was getting hungry. And I'm like, oh, if she sees what I got for food, she's going to be so mad at me. I went last night and got it. I'm sorry.
Did you? Yeah. You feel bad? No, you don't.
It was delicious. I was gonna go up there and say, hey, there's some...
Oh, I already ate it all, so there's none left.
You ate it?
Well, you went on a date without me.
I went by myself.
Sure you did.
In my Subaru.
With your lesbian lover.
With what?
With your lesbian lover.
Yeah.
Like that sneaky, dirty bastard.
I can't hear you. What?
That sneaky, dirty bastard.
So it's obviously kind of hard to see, but what I ended up doing is I leveled off the front differential so the pinion is at 0 degrees. I then made sure that the nuts were perfectly flat with a straight edge. So I just used my ratchet, adjusted these on this side, made sure they were flat. I did the same thing on the other side and made sure the other side, this measurement, right, or not measurement, I want to make sure that these were at a 0 plane on the other side. So then what I did was I clamped this all together. I rotated this to get this to make sure the axle bell was at 0 degrees. So it's at 0.1 right now. Things are going to move a little bit. So that's all at 0. My measurement is even from the pinion to the backing plate on the passenger side, backing plate on the driver's side. I say pinion, I mean drive shaft yoke. I think at this point, I'm just gonna grab the MIG welder and get some tacks around the outside edges. I have a straight edge. My straight edge is reading everything is true at the moment. It's It's nice and straight, nice and flat. I've got 2 pieces of angle iron on this. I think I'm ready to at least get some tack welds in place, so I'm gonna do that now. I'm gonna go in the house, grab some lunch with Allie, and then I'm gonna get the axle cut down, get the axle put in place, and then I'm gonna get my plumb bobs dropped and figure out exactly how this rear axle is sitting inside the chassis, and then hopefully get this thing squared up to the chassis by the end of the day. And then once that's all set, I can get, like I said, these stands made for now, temporarily, until I can get my plates and everything. Get some stands made for the rear axle, but once that's set, I can get my motor and transmission in the chassis of this thing, and I'm really excited to do that. And I'm gonna let those welds cool down, go in and grab some lunch with Allie, and then head back out, and then hopefully get that thing welded up, and then keep moving on, you know? All right, so what I did was used a plumb bob down here, going down until the plumb bob was centered on the string. I did the same thing in the front with the front spring perch to make sure that everything was in a direct line, make sure everything was in alignment. I got my pinion angle set at 0 degrees. I made sure that this axle side to side was at 0 degrees. The pinion's at 0 degrees. From the frame to the underside of the tube is 3.5 inches on both sides. I cut down some mounts. I made some stanchions. I got those welded in place. So it's centered on the chassis, centered on the frame table, 0 degrees plane, 0 degrees plane. And then I made sure it was triangulated, the measurements from the center of my axle. Once I had everything in place and bolted back in, if I ran a plumb bob down and it went right down to that X right there. There's another one of those X's on that side of the floor. You can see it there. And what I did was I triangulated a measurement from, you can't really see it. Oh, right there. From the center of that mark right there, I measured it that way and then that way. And once I had the exact same measurement, I checked it multiple times, probably 20 times. I knew it was in all set, ready to go. So what I did was I tack welded everything together and got that set in place. So that rear axle is centered, squared, and at 0 degrees. So the next thing I did was I took a Speedway kit for the split wishbone mounts. So that's the box, that's the kit that I ordered. 11/16 tie rod end mounting brackets. But what I did was I took the top 1.5 inches of it off. So you can see that's what it looked like. If I had left it like that and put it on the bottom of the frame, my wishbones would have been a couple inches from the ground, and I didn't want that. So I just eliminated a little over 1.5 inches of it, made sure that my front axle was square, made sure that these adjustments on my tie rods were square. They're both 1 1/8 inches out, so I knew I had at least 50% of the thread sticking in. At that point, I made sure that I had the same measurement from the front of the frame horn to the back side of the spring. I made sure everything was square. Once I did that, I was able to tack these mounts in place. I just threw a couple of tacks real quick. Like I said, pop those in place. After that, while I was in the process of doing that, I had to pie cut my wishbones. The reason why I had to pie cut my wishbones is to make sure that I got the proper caster of my front axle. So this spring perch, this surface right here is at 9.5 degrees. So I had to make sure that the spring and then the axle caster was also at 9.5 degrees. So what I'm gonna do is after I get everything all set, I'm gonna get these welded up, both sides. All I did was left a little spot on the bottom to keep it connected. What I also had to do is, because these are Model A wishbones, they have a 2.25 inch opening here from the underside to the top side of this one. And because it's a later axle, this has a 2-inch boss. You need to make, or either buy or make or add a 1/4 inch spacer. So that's what this is right here. So I actually bought these washers. Everything's just finger tight. I bought these washers and just opened up the inner diameter of them. It's a 1/4 inch washer. So that's on both sides here. So once I had all that set in place, I got my wishbones tacked in place, like I said, on my mounts. Same thing on this side. I just got to put some nuts on these. Once I get the nuts put on those and get my drums cut down, I'll be able to put my front wheels back on, be able to bolt the rear wheels on. After I modify those drums, my drums are right there, I'm gonna take that engine off the engine stand, bolt the transmission that's right there to it, and I'm gonna get that set up here in place on the table so I can figure out where my motor mounts are gonna go, which they're gonna be hard mounted, so there's not gonna be any rubber biscuits or anything. So I'll have a motor mount here. I'm gonna have mid plate here for my transmission, for my bell housing, and then that's gonna be it. And then after that, I'll do, you know, guards and all that other stuff.